Hey everyone, it's Leandra and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing a book that quite literally turned my reading experience upside down as a reader, and that is none other than Verity by Colleen Hoover. Basically, this book inspired me to return to BookTube, and it also inspired me to share with you how much I absolutely love this book. Now, I gotta be really honest with you, when I was recommended this book by one of my best friends, I was excited to start it just because I obviously always appreciate a good recommendation by one of my best friends or one of my good friends, but I honestly was expecting myself to only like the book and not absolutely love and devour it in the way that I did, but this book, I don't know if you guys, whoever has read this book knows what I've been going through and knows, probably you guys have been going through the same thing if you've read Verity, but my mind is completely blown. Now, those of you that know me in real life, or know me in any way, would probably know that my absolute favorite movie in the entire universe is Inception. And one of the reasons why I love Inception so much is that it really creates a discussion at the end of the movie. Like, the movie itself is a masterpiece, both on the filmography scale, the plot is amazing, the action sequences are, you know, out of this world, but most of all, the movie really makes you think, like, was this really reality? Was it not reality? And so on. And I kind of felt a similar experience when I was reading Verity. It really made me question, like, the ending of this book made me question absolutely everything that I read as I was going through this book the first time. And I don't know, it was just, first of all, it was unputdownable because just the suspense and the mystery really kept me hooked. And then also there was this like underlying layer of like, you don't really know what to think once you finish reading it, and I guess that might annoy certain people, but with me, it's like, it's the best feeling in the world because it means that I now have endless hours that I can go onto the internet, talk to my friends, and I can discuss the complexities and depth of this book in, you know, in a way that I can't do with most books. So, as you guys might know from my little rant that I'm doing right now, I definitely gave Verity by Colleen Hoover 5 out of 5 stars. In fact, I didn't just give it 5 out of 5 stars, I also gave it 10 out of 10 stars on my 10 stars rating, also on my blog. You know, because sometimes like a 9 will also translate to a 5 out of 5 stars if I'm rounding up or down on my Goodreads like rating scale, but this wasn't just a 5 out of 5, this was a 10 out of 10, which in my opinion is saying like a lot about this book. So for those of you who don't know what Verity is, I will quickly give you a very, very short synopsis and then get into some non-spoiler thoughts that I had about this book, but a lot of the discussion will be spoiler based, but I will warn you guys before I get into the spoilers. Verity is about a woman named Lowen Ashley who is kind of a financially struggling author. Like, she's an author, like she's written a couple books, but she's really tight for money at the moment when she happens to get offered a job by a man named Jeremy Crawford, who is the husband of a very popular author called Verity Crawford. Verity is incapable of writing since she's just had a car accident, and so basically she's looking for someone, or she needs someone to ghostwrite the last 3 installments of her book series, and basically Lowen gets offered the job, which she is a bit hesitant to take at the beginning because she feels like an enormous burden on her. She feels like she's not going to be good enough for the job. She's like worried about, you know, whether she can even do it, but she ends up accepting the job and basically moving into Verity and Jeremy's house for a couple weeks, simply because there are a whole bunch of notes that Verity has left behind in her office that basically Lowen needs to go through to piece together the story that she needs to write for the series, and also just to like gain some more information about what Verity was thinking while writing this book, sort of get a more in-depth view into her brain and her writing process, until she happens to stumble upon something very interesting and disturbing. Basically, she finds an unpublished autobiography written by Verity herself that contains some extremely disturbing, almost gruesome and downright horrific things about her past. And over the course of this book, Lowen really struggles to figure out what to do with this autobiography, whether to tell Jeremy about it. And there's also the underlying sort of drama of like Lowen and Jeremy's relationship sort of beginning to develop. So this is kind of like, it's a mix of romance, a mix of like thriller, mystery. It's very psychologically disturbing when you think about it, but I really loved it. It was really, really good book. And I think one of the things that I especially loved about this book was the unique format that it contained, which is that once Lowen discovers Verity's autobiographical manuscript, the chapters of this book sort of begin to alternate between chapters of the autobiography and chapters of like what's happening in the present in Lowen's life as she lives in this sort of like freaky house with like Jeremy and Verity and everything. And I really loved it. I felt like both sides of the story was very interesting, but I have to be honest with you guys and say that probably the most interesting part of this book, and the reason why I was so hooked on reading this book and I finished it in like basically a day and a half, was that I was so interested in Verity's autobiographical chapters. Me personally, as a clinical psychology major, I also find it really interesting to dive into the depths of Verity's mind, because you can definitely tell that there is an unsettled like insanity there, and maybe even like some sort of disorder that she has. And so that was really interesting for me to piece together. And also there is this underlying mystery of Verity's illness, like no one knew how she got like into the car crash, and basically her car crash has left her like incapable of talking, incapable of like doing anything. She just sits there, she gets fed by her like caretaker, and you know, she gets bathed and stuff, so she's not actually like mentally there, but that's also something that gets added into like the mystery of the story. And overall this book was just really awesome. There wasn't like a whole lot of like crazy out of this world things happening, you know, they weren't like in a like haunted supernatural like cemetery with like loads of like spooky things happening. It wasn't really like that. It was just like real life things along with this like super psychologically like gruesome backstory and backdrop to Verity's life. Like really made it a chilling read. And honestly, like I will probably go back and reread this book at least once more, and I mean I won't spoil anything, but the ending really makes you question everything, and I absolutely love that. So I will now get into some spoilers for Verity. So if you haven't read the book, or if you don't want to get spoiled, I don't know how to tell you to read this book, but you need to read it basically. And then yeah, you can come back and listen to what I've got to say about it, or you can even join what I did, which is I joined a Facebook group on Facebook, which is basically just for like discussing this book. And if that doesn't tell you how interesting this book is, then I don't know what will. But basically this book is amazing, and I would highly recommend for anyone who's interested in like even the slightest bit of mystery, like to read it. I was absolutely speechless at the end of the book when basically we were sort of presented with the option that Verity's manuscript might not have even been real, but was basically just like a writer's like exercise for her to dig deep into like her villainous mind basically. And that really shook me to the core. And at first, I gotta be honest with you, like at first I actually believed the letter that she wrote. I believed that her her autobiography was not real, and that really unsettled me, because basically that would mean that she was innocently murdered by Lowen and Jeremy at the end of the book. And I was so heartbroken by the fact that this poor woman, like comatose, like in a like wake coma, you could say, was basically murdered by her own husband, thinking that she was like the biggest villain in the whole story. Until I sort of began to think about it a bit more, and I was like, like actually there are a lot of like red flags, both in Jeremy's like account of like his story with her, and also like other things that she picked up on from the autobiography, which really makes me rethink that, yeah, that Verity isn't actually who she says she was in the letter, mainly from the fact that she seems like, even if she was innocent for some of the things that she claims to have done in her autobiography, she still seems like a deeply troubled and like possibly like a narcissistic person who, you know, she's very good at manipulating people. She basically pretended like she was ill for I think weeks, like for half a year, pretended that she couldn't even speak to her husband, and like that's like a really fucked up and manipulative thing to do on its own. But also if you think about it, like if her autobiography is real, then her constructing the letter in order to put herself into a better light does definitely make a lot of sense, and would definitely go along with her almost like psychotic sort of like symptoms. She might, one of the thoughts that I had personally, that while I was reading, that I didn't actually yet see someone else mention in any of the discussion forums, but maybe I'm not alone in thinking this, because there was that one period of time where she basically had a psychotic episode where she thought that one of her daughters was gonna murder the other twin. And I was like, okay, well, you know, from a psychological point of view, okay, sometimes it's common for people to have psychotic symptoms in their life. Like, that's not a very uncommon thing to happen, but pair that with a very unstable personality. She seems overly attached. She seems almost hysterical at some points, which makes me wonder whether possibly like her delusions like maybe continued on in her life, and maybe she even at the very end of her life began to convince herself that she was innocent. That was one of the things that I was thinking, that maybe like her letter was actually written from her perspective of the truth, even though it's just a delusion, if that makes sense. That was one of the thoughts that I had. But it could also very well be that she was just manipulating the whole letter, that she was just lying. But that's just my opinion. That's just one of the like theories that I have. But honestly, there's so much to piece together. You can look at Jeremy and his like really weird relationship with Verity. You can look at Verity's behavior. You can look at Crue's behavior, her son's behavior throughout this book. It seems like everything is very, very disturbing. Yeah, it's just it was super interesting for me to just go back mentally through the plot of the book and pick up on some of these like small details that I had never even thought of before. And I don't know, this book is just so rich, full of like details, and I don't know, I would love to hear your guys' discussions and like theories and stuff, because my brain is absolutely like spiraling out of control just thinking about it. And I think that one of the things that I also really like about this book is, if you guys don't know this, Colleen Hoover herself has claimed that even like she doesn't know what the truth is. Like, she wrote these characters from mainly Lowen's point of view, so she herself said that she actually doesn't have access into the minds of Jeremy and Verity. Like, she can only write what Lowen has seen, and so she herself like doesn't know whether Verity was lying or not. And even though obviously like it kind of unsettles me that there's no like truth to figure out, because I love a good mystery, I love figuring out what the truth is, but it makes it super interesting because it really could swing both ways. It really is just like up to the interpretation of the reader herself, and I think that that's great because it really incites discussion and, you know, theories being bounced back and forth and everything. And yeah, I just absolutely love it. I honestly like can't help noticing the comparisons between Verity and my favorite movie, Inception, you know, which is also that like you can argue everything from like any point of view that you want. There's loads of philosophical ideas that you could pick up on as well in the movie, and I feel like there's just so much to pick out like from this book. I love that. I love when a book makes you think about it for longer than you spent reading it, if that makes sense. Like, I probably read this book in maybe like 4 hours or something, or 5 hours, but I will probably think about this book for the rest of my life. Yeah, this is definitely gonna make me pick up Colleen Hoover's other books and stuff. And yeah, so if you guys have any recommendations of books that are like Verity, please give them to me down in the comments. I would love to hear them. That is it for my video. I loved Verity with all my heart, and I'm really looking forward to picking up some more mysteries or psychological thrillers in the future. I've definitely discovered a genre that I hadn't yet begun to delve into. I'm mostly stuck with YA, just because I feel like there's so many books still in the YA category that I haven't read, or like new adult books, or, you know, I lean more towards like sci-fi, supernatural, fantasy, but I don't really pick up like contemporary thrillers or psychological thrillers or mysteries, but I'm definitely gonna reach for them a lot more now that I've read Verity, now that I know the kind of like intense feelings that these genres can offer. So yeah, so I honestly think that this book opened up an entire door of book possibilities for me, and I will forever be grateful for Colleen Hoover, yeah, to have written this book. As always, thank you guys so much for watching my review. If you have any thoughts about Verity, please leave them down below and let me know what your, you know, theories are, what you've conceptualized in your head, and anything else that you might want to add to the discussion. And yeah, check out the Facebook discussion groups if you haven't already. And also there's some great like Reddit forums if you guys ever like want to, you know, share your thoughts and stuff. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like or consider leaving a comment, and also subscribe if you haven't already. I will hopefully be posting a lot more videos in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you're having a great morning, evening, night, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you soon.